Good morning all. Yes, thanks Debs, and thanks to DASA for inviting us along this morning. Was actually thinking today as I was travelling in that this is the first time in actually probably nearly 2.5 years that I've actually presented to an actual audience in Inverness. I have presented a few other places, but in that 2 years the world has certainly changed, and the opportunities and challenges have changed in that time as well. So what's the thing that's going to help in terms of overcome some of those challenges, some of the challenges that both Anna talked about and Paula talked about, and that is innovation. And Highlands and Isles Enterprise, which is the main economic development agency for the north of Scotland. So we cover everywhere from Shetland in the north all the way down to the bottom end of Argyll, Campbelltown and Machrihanish. So I work in the innovation and technology team. We've got, at the moment, we've got 3 members of that team, but we're looking to add to that shortly. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the support directly that HIE can do in terms of supporting innovation, supporting companies, businesses, even individuals moving forward, and also some of the organisations that we support and collaborate with as well. So just going to talk through a few of the things that we do and the things that we support. As you see, I've a list there. I'm not going to go through them all, but we do cover both in terms of finance, advice, access to expertise, access on intellectual property. We work closely with other public sector and academic partners. That includes innovation centres. Obviously, Anna talked about Interface, which we've got 3 Innovate staff that we support, presence up in Inverness. And we also do awareness raising events, learning journeys, and we can work quite closely with Innovate UK and other partners, including DASA, the Chamber, etc. So support for innovation, research and development. Well, we've got our own R&D funding, which can help to support feasibility projects, larger R&D projects. We tend not to do that with open calls. We tend to do that on a sort of case-by-case basis, that as long as it meets the criteria that we're looking for, which includes measures on potential new jobs, potential increase in growth for that company, very much increases in productivity, reduction in carbon footprint. All these criteria usually mean that we can look to support companies on projects moving forward. So obviously there's elements of due diligence that we go through, but more than happy to speak to people if they've got a particular project that we can look to see what support we can give, and I'll talk through an example of that moving forward. We can also give support and feedback for applications for external funding, e.g. Smart Scotland, Innovate UK funding, even we'll obviously point in the direction of DASA, and also academic resources. Even though it's obviously less prevalent at the moment, there is still EU funding available and various different calls that we can help support and facilitate too. And obviously one of the key areas, one of the busy areas that's actually really this last year or two is intellectual property support. So we've got in-house team, include myself, that can give a general overview. We also provide access to the IP audit scheme, which is basically, as it says, basically a review of a company's strengths and weaknesses when it comes to intellectual property, and they can apply via HIE to the IPO for a £3,000 grant. So they have to pay, I think it was £2,500 grant, £500 they have to pay themselves, and that's to pay for an IP attorney to do a full review or a particular aspect of their IP journey. And the Intellectual Property Office also introduced a new scheme about a year ago, the IP Access scheme, that following on from that, they can give up to 5k for a company to take some of those forward. So I think we've had 8 successful IP Access schemes in the last 8 months. So that's been really helpful and sort of one of the key areas that we do support. So if you've got any intellectual property inquiries, whether it's patents, whether it's trademarks, whether it's copywriting, anything like that, more than happy to speak to you about that. And as I mentioned, I'm just going to flick back to my first slide. As you can see, we've got different area teams that cover specific patches of the Highlands and Islands, and we work closely with these teams, and they also give access out with, whether it's innovation and that, access to training and mentoring, access to special advice, helping to support in terms of international export advice, obviously looking in terms of external funding or internal funding. They can also offer funding for capital expenditure as well. They also do various one-to-many events, work closely with clients. We've got the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service to review efficiency and productivity, and we also try and feed back into the government, a little bit of the chamber, influence policy and moving forward. We got a new chief executive that started, Stuart Black, at the start of the year, and Stuart is very keen that HIE is seen as a good collaborative partner, both with fellow public sector organisations, but obviously with organisations full stop. And sort of moving forward, sort of key areas that we're aiming on is obviously the low carbon agenda. We're looking in terms of renewables and making the Highlands as an exemplar in that area, both with offshore, onshore wind, opportunities in terms of carbon, opportunities in terms of wave and tidal, especially up in the Pentland Firth. So if you have any sort of queries or questions, please talk to me about that. But moving on, here's a quick example of one of the companies supported. Ultimate Add-ons, they're actually based over in Wester Ross, and what they do is they provide or sell mainly online, quite international clients actually, various mechanisms to attach mobile phones to motorbikes and scooters, and it's all sort of linked up. And they've been really successful in the sort of Asian markets, especially around Japan, but they sell all over. And they had a problem with, they created this charging solution for mobile phones and motorbikes and scooters that tended to, in countries with higher temperatures, so it's not such a big problem in the Highlands or even the UK as well, tend to overheat. So we provided some initial in terms of scoping the challenge and the project, and we got in a special advisor who was a sort of expert on sort of electronics and this particular aspect, and they got a bit of funding from HIE through a small innovation grant, and that actually sort of solved the problem for them, which was great. We also had asked about the issue in terms of disclaimers on the stuff that they sold, so we referred them to a legal company. They did do an IP audit, and they also got some local area grant support funding to help with that further R&D project. And we now obviously check in with this client on a regular basis, and they've I think they've taken on 2 new staff members, and I think their overall growth has gone up about 20%, even during sort of lockdown and the whole COVID time. So that's just an example of where we can help. We're busy at the moment in the innovation team working on a new small grant scheme which can offer support from anywhere from 15k to 100k to companies on research and development and innovation programs. So I think that's really it from me, but thank you for listening. There's my contact details, so if any questions either today or moving forward, or anyone who's viewing this online in the next few days, weeks or months, feel free to drop me an email. I'm more than happy to assist. So thank you for your time this morning.